Today we're going to discuss something called Porter's Five Forces. Michael Porter was the person who actually created it. Porter's Five Forces are primarily for business analysis towards competition. So you can call it competitive intelligence, competitive analysis. The five forces are strategic. So whenever we speak about strategy, we know that strategy is the long game, big picture, of an organization. We could think of the strategy as the war and the longevity plan of the organization, the strategic long game of the organization. That is the war, and tactics are the small fights, the battles that are serving the war. And when we look at it that way, it makes more sense. It's militaristic, but it works. So the very first piece of Porter's Five Forces is rivalry. Rivalry among existing competitors. The people that are competing against each other, they have a rivalry of some sort. So it looks at the intensity of the competition. How intense is the competition in the market? I mean, I'm going to be speaking on fast food for this one. You'll see. You go right into fast food. We're talking all the brands. It is influenced by the number of competitors, but it's also influenced by the industry's growth. So, you have the number of people competing against each other in a given industry, and then the growth rate of that and exit, the barriers that people are trying to exit from that, the things that are holding them back. You got to remember, exit barriers are a way that you are competing, but you're trying to go away from the red water. Red water is where all the sharks go to eat all the fish, and the blue water is the schools of fish that no one's touching. So you could think of it as the exit barrier are the things that are blocking you from getting over to that fresh water, getting over to that blue water where the fish are, where those customers. So you think of it that way. Another key point with the Porter's Five Forces is the threat of new entrants. New entrants. So what this basically does, it's how easy or hard it is for new companies to just break into an industry, just to smash into it. Sometimes, if it's a really competitive marketplace, someone will spot a new entrant and form a partnership right away. They catch wind, make them an offer they can't refuse, as they say. It happens. Not in every case, but sometimes. So when a new entrant comes in, when someone enters the industry, that can be considered a threat. Oh, we have a new threat. Now we have to find out everything about them. Who are they? What are they selling? What do they got? What's their, minimum viable product? What is their whole entire unique value proposition? The whole 9 yards. So when we look at that, we have to look at how easy or difficult it is for the new companies to enter the industry based on the barriers, the things that are like stopping them, like money, capital, requirements, policy, politicalness, economics of it, the government policies, and of course the environmental even. And this is where pestle comes in, which I'll save for another video, but it's important for us to understand that it's the economic and political policies, government policies that are there. And the next one for the Porter's Five is the threat of substitute products or services, meaning people find it threatening if there's a new product coming out that is going to replace their product or a service for that matter. so that we look at the products that fulfill the same need, the same customer need, but in a different way. And what that does is that pulls the customers away. You know, if I'm Burger King and I have a hamburger and it's like the most amazing burger and everybody's coming to have it, and all of a sudden another hamburger comes out tomorrow that's like incredible, right? We could look at it that way. It's a threat of a substitute product. I'm using fast food as a fun example because everybody probably can relate to it. Now, you have to look at the way that the customer's needs are, if the needs are being met, and that can, like, if you have that best burger in town and everybody else goes to the other hamburgers out there, it could be a matter of price, but it could be also a matter of performance. That hamburger's outperforming yours, right? Everybody loves McRib, right? It's usually the case. The bargaining power. So when we're dealing, this is the last one, we're dealing with suppliers. I mean, you're going to have a business, you're going to get supplies from people, and there's a certain amount of bargaining power. They have the ability to bargain. So this looks at what kind of control does the suppliers have in order to raise prices or lower quality. So you got to think about that fast food restaurant and all the supplies that go to it, you know, and all of those things that if the prices go up, that's impacting your bottom line and your business. It depends on the concentration of suppliers and the uniqueness of their goods. That's where it gets interesting. The uniqueness of the goods. It's like, hey, you know, I'm receiving this product for my fast food chain. I'm receiving it, and someone else makes the same product slightly cheaper. But maybe I'm locked into a contract for the next 5 years. So this can change the dynamic because you want to bargain, but they have the power. You know, they have the right to raise the prices and lower the quality. And if you're locked into agreements, it can impact you. It can impact you. So the bargaining power of the suppliers is just as important as the bargaining power of the people that are buying. That examines the level of stress that customers put on the companies to lower their prices. And that it's like, okay, that needs to be cheaper, and you need to decrease the not only the price, but raise the level of quality. I need you to improve quality and reduce the price. And now, because of that, this can impact the availability of having alternate options. So buyers have the power too, the power of the consumer, which has always been there. So now let's go ahead and go over some examples. The very first one for Porter is rivalry among existing competitors. So if we look at two streaming services that are out there, we look at Netflix, Disney plus Max. The companies are spending just faucet water amount of money, billions on original content to attract the subscribers, because now we have YouTube. Now we have this, we have that. We have all these different competing streaming services. So because the switching between services, and that's what happens, is people play them against each other. They'll go with one service for 9 months, and then when the price drops, they switch. Like, oh, it's $2 less, so I'm going to go over there for a little bit. So they bounce back from subscriber to subscriber, right, with that. That's what gets interesting. So just with a couple of clicks, you can just switch your competition really fast. When they're switching between services with just a few clicks, that's also the costs. So there's low switching costs. Someone is running a deal over there. Someone's dropping the price over on that side a little bit, not too much. But they're adding their value. They're increasing their value and lowering the price just by a hair, just by a little bit. Undercut the competition a little bit. So they did this with the platforms. The platforms have to constantly compete on price and have to constantly compete on the exclusive shows that we're the only one that has this show. And that's it. I remember watching, Apple TV about 3 years ago, 4 years ago. They had the TV show C. It was exclusive. No one else had it, but it was really good. For those of you that didn't see it, if you like that post-apocalyptic kind of thing. And they have to compete not only on the exclusive shows that we have the show, they don't, but we also have to compete on the user experience. How easy is it? Is our platform easy to use? Is it intuitive? Can you get in there and make a playlist and reserve stuff? That's all. Now, when you look at the fast food chains, which, I use them as an example because they're really easy to understand. McDonald's, Burger King, and Wendy's. All right. Totally saturated markets, but they force the companies to fight for the exact same customer base. They're always fighting. You see? And all I got to do is release a new burger next week, and it just gets that easy. But they're looking for the same customer base, and they're fighting for it. So they have heavy price wars. The price wars it's on like Donkey Kong. Okay. It's aggressive marketing campaigns, frequent menu. They have to innovate their menu. Oh, we brought our dollar menu back. Uh-oh, life is over now, right? The whole world stops. The dollar menu is back. This is how it goes, right? So that's where it gets wild. They innovate their menu or try. And they have to do that because they have to protect their existing share in the market. What were to happen if they were shifting their brand constantly and sending the wrong message? If you had a company just up and change their logo constantly and up and change their message constantly, it would create a lack of transparency and customer distrust real fast. Now, when we look at the threat of new entrants, as an example, we look at aircraft manufacturing, Boeing and Airbus. The threat is not very high, but it's there. It's there. So they start a new commercial aviation company, and it requires billions of dollars in money and capital. Decades of just working on engineering to make better planes and better hangars and all that stuff. And of course, they have what's called a global supply chain, the ability to grab supplies globally from everywhere, right? But they have regulations. You go into different countries, different policies. Regulations impact everything, right? So the people that are entering in that's new, they can't realistically just pop up to challenge the dominant player so quickly. It doesn't work that way. Not so fast. What they can do is find a way to get into the market and just maintain operational stability. We're just going to be quiet and make money. Just continue, and we'll innovate our prices once in a while, and we'll just build our base. Walk softly, carry a big stick, so to speak. So they can't realistically pop up like that. Not so fast. I mean, it does happen, but Now, when we look at coffee shops, also local coffee shops or the mobile apps, the threat is pretty high. So if you open up a small cafe in town, or you build a mobile app, that could have a small amount of money, and the regulations are pretty minimal. Things that are holding you back are pretty minimal. But when you establish a business in that section, you have to deal with digital competitors entering the market. There's another coffee shop, and they have their app too. Now they have something different. And there are a lot of people that will say shop local, shop local, shop. They push the whole shop local, which is very noble. I find it noble. I find it appreciative. I appreciate local businesses. I appreciate their ability to stand out and do things. And I love on them because they're the underdog. They're moving past the rest of the chains that are out there. But it's also important to comprehend that customers are a creature of habit. People will go back to their old ways. They will go back to the old way of doing things. And even the mom and pop shops that are claiming stay local, still have to innovate and make changes. They still have to, like I'm all about helping those kinds of businesses because it's like, all right, let's do it. But if they're in survival mode, any company that's in survival mode, you can offer up the biggest solution and their nervous system. Oh, I don't know if this will work. We're just trying to keep our head above water. I don't know if we can pull this off. A lot of self-doubt, a lot of doubts, corporate doubts, company doubts. Now, moving on to the threat of substitute products and services, talking about the Big Mac and whatnot. A substitute is not a rival. They're not a rival company doing the same thing. It's not Coke versus Pepsi. It is a completely different industry. It is a different industry, but fulfilling the same need, which is pretty wild. So if you look if we look at, let's say, business travel versus video conferencing, it's like airlines versus Zoom. Wow. Right? So during the time where they cut the budget or there's a travel disruption, the clients may not fly at all, but they'll use Zoom at home, Microsoft Teams, Google Meet instead, right? Now, a little while back, when there was a big slowness on flying, a lot of people weren't flying around. I forget what it was a while back. Must have been maybe a year ago or so. I can't remember off the top of my head. But a lot of people were flying a whole lot less. That would have been an opportunity for Zoom to say, don't fly. You get to have a commercial. You get to be there without being there. And we're going to cut a deal. As crazy as that sounds. But it's an alternate service, but it fulfills the core goal. Communication versus meetings live, right? It does it in a different way. And what it does is it caps how much the airlines can charge for a business ticket. So now when we look at old school taxis versus ride sharing, which is like Uber and Lyft and all that good stuff, the ride sharing platforms that are out there, which by the way, most of their contracts have arbitration clauses baked in. Go look that up. You'll find out what that's about. So if you're watching this and you're a Lyft or Uber driver, go look up arbitration clause. And that's what your contract has. There is no class action lawsuit. And if there was, I would be surprised. But here we go. The platforms like Lyft and Uber, they fulfill the basic transport. And they use the smartphone technology with peer-to-peer drivers, right, to make that happen. They're not using the traditional vehicle fleets where you have to buy. A cab company has an entire fleet of vehicles, and they're using those different systems to do that. There's upkeep with that. So this is a model that goes away from the customer volume and goes away from the traditional taxis and starts to go towards smaller, quick rides from point A to point B. New York City is still doing its thing. I'm a New Yorker at heart, and I'll die a New Yorker at heart. Let's talk about bargaining power of suppliers, the aircraft versus jet engine suppliers, right? To the commercial airlines. It's extremely high. Extremely high. So The commercial airlines, they rely entirely on what we call duopoly. It's not monopoly, it's duopoly. It's duopoly of aircraft makers. So it's like Boeing and Airbus. And they have a handful of engineers and manufacturers, right? And dealing with those engine repair folks. So the airlines can't switch manufacturers very easily. And that gives the suppliers immense power, a lot of power over the pricing and over the delivery schedule and over the contract terms. You see? So if someone were to come out tomorrow and were to be an engine manufacturer, this is why we see companies can fold overnight, issues or lose the bottom line. Now let's go over to music and record labels for those people that I love music. Listen, I love music. Music's my life. I'm not a musician. I have respect for them, but I love music. Music and the record labels, they have their thing going on. They have music, the record labels, and then they got the streaming platforms like Spotify. So the supplier power is pretty high. The record labels, you got Universal, Sony, and Warner, they hold the rights to catalogs of music. Okay? Spotify depends on these catalog rights to keep their user base in line. It allows the labels to negotiate the royalties, the payments, the royalties that are payouts, and they cut heavily into streaming profit margins. This is why, you see the hip hop artists, EPMD, the group EPMD, and Eric Sermon, the rapper. I enjoy his stuff. He talks about how when they change the label game, when the game of labels change, you could cut out all of this money that's going to the streaming service and not to the artist. And he talks about that. And that's what makes him a businessman. But he's also a damn good artist, too. So I wanted to share that. Now, Spotify needs that user base. And negotiations have to happen with the artists. And there are contracts. Contracts have terms. For a certain amount of time, you will get paid X, Y, Z. And the following year, things change. Stuff changes. Then you go find another contract sometimes. Now, when you look at the bargaining power of the buyers, retail stores to consumer good brands like Walmart to actually suppliers, it's extremely high. You're looking at Walmart. Walmart buys the products in droves, like large amounts of product, massive volume. So if a consumer good, if that brand refuses to lower its wholesale price, and Walmart can just pull the product off its shelves and replace it with something else. Okay, so you're not going to lower that price? Great, we'll just take it off our shelf. We'll replace it. No problem. Lots of luck, gentlemen. Have a good time. So that gives Walmart a lot of leverage over the supplier prices. And that's where it gets interesting. Now, when we look at e-commerce, we have the, e-commerce plus the travel aggregators out there. That's what you could call them, like Kayak and Google Flights and all that. There's a lot of competitiveness. There's high buyer power. So when you have these aggregators, they act as an engine that compares a whole bunch of stuff, and it gives you, the buyer, you're the person traveling, it gives you the power to access price across dozens of sellers all in one shot. So what happens is when you're switching from one online seller or an airline ticket to another, it takes seconds to switch and it costs nothing. So you're the consumer, you're buying the ticket, you have the bargaining power, you have that ability, and we have that power to force companies to keep their price competitive. Interesting, right? Now, how do we use the Porter 5? Like, we talked about everything it is now. We can get down to the bottom line of this episode and wrap it up in roughly a half-hour time. We use the model. We first find the industry power, the power in that industry. Whatever the industry is, we look for the power of it. And once we find the power of that industry, the capabilities and the power of the industry, we look at what group holds the most control over the prices and over the profit. We look at that. You dissect it. You put them under a microscope. You don't use your imagination. You use facts, raw information. You go straight to the heart of the matter. You have to pull all of this information, build a case to create enough patterns that provide a pathway and direction. It's not a prediction. It's looking at all of the details, putting it all together, and understanding what their next move is going to be. So you have to be able to see which group holds the price and profit control. Then from there, what's their profitability? How profitable is it? You're going to decide, is this an industry that's an attractive industry that people are moving towards? Or is it a tough one to make good money? Right? And at the end, once you decide if the industry is attractive, you make a strategy. You build a plan to protect your business, to understand what your business is up against. And you could use, and I've talked about this on other videos, you can watch it on my other videos, you could use inverted thinking for that. Use inverted thinking. Start from the worst case scenario and go backwards. That's all I'm going to say. I hope you enjoyed this. We did it in approximately 30 minutes. The Porter's 5 with actual examples and a simple, easy way to use the model to get granular. All right, have a great day. Take care. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with people who need